This episode of Important If True is brought to you by Quip. Nice, usable, well-designed electric toothbrushes with brush head refills sent to your home. If you go to tryquip.com/thumbs, you will get $10 off your first brush head refill.
There's an alternate world where we had themed these episodes and we saved up a bunch of stuff for a chicken spectacular, and it would be fucking amazing content.
That's true. Big chicken.
God, there's like the Brahma chicken, the guy screaming rooster, chicken face dinosaur, and VR chickens.
Yeah.
We can create a best of.
A best of chicken.
Yeah. Subscribe to our chickens playlist on our YouTube channel. Chicken news. Sorry, guys. We got to really dial back on the chicken talk.
On the chicken
recently.
content.
It's been way too many chickens.
Chicken shit.
Chicken shit in the morning.
Yeah. Chicken shit with Frankie and the Schnoz.
Yeah.
With veggie panino.
Frankie had the schnoz.
That's just the first thing I thought about.
Which was scientifically turned into a dinosaur beak. It's May 18th, 2017.
And this is Important If True.
From Idle Thumbs, I'm Chris Remo.
I'm Nick Brecken.
I'm Jake Rodkin. Nick, I like that you're mixing up the Important If True read. We're getting a lot of different takes.
Thanks for noticing.
That was a sober read, I would say.
Yeah.
No,
it's my morning read.
That's true.
Yeah.
it's good. It'll, when we're editing the podcast's entire existence, we'll have a lot of material to work with for which is like the really emotionally true line read of, and this is emotionally true.
And this is emotionally true.
This is raw.
Way too honest appraisal of this podcast. God, what if we'd call this podcast emotionally true? That would put quite a burden.
And then welcome to Emotionally True. Anyway, big stomping robot, huge chickens.
It's probably more accurate than we would like to admit.
Yeah.
I got my haircut yesterday.
Nice.
And
Emotional truth.
Emotional
coming
truth,
true.
yeah.
Coming true. Coming soon.
There's
Everything
some
is
kind
true.
of emotional truth coming from this story. But the reason I mentioned that is because, Nick, you and I have the same hair cutter.
We do.
Yeah.
She's fantastic.
She's really good. She told me a very good story yesterday that I feel like permission to retell this story was suggested. It was like tacitly conveyed. So I'm going to try and tell it because it was very. I have no context or way to situate this.
Right.
It was just a good story that was conveyed, and I want to share it with more people.
Good stories just leak out of her.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. Yeah, it is very true. So this was a story, if I recall correctly, about one of her clients' husband's coworkers, I think.
Okay.
So it's our hair cutter's client's husband's coworker in this situation. So this woman was on a business trip or something, or I believe she flew to Seattle. She went out to a bar, met a guy. They kind of clicked. You know what? Maybe I'll come over. So she goes over to his place. They have a good night. She stays the night. Mm-hmm. Following morning, he's got to go to work. He's like, okay, I got to go. This was great. This was been super great. Stay as long as you want. Make yourself at home in the apartment. Whenever you leave, don't worry about it. The door automatically locks, so you don't need to worry about locking up any of that stuff. It's just it's fine. Nick, you're giving me a weird look, but this isn't.
Keep going.
This isn't a This isn't a weird thing.
I'm giving you a weird look for another reason, but keep going.
Okay. Okay.
Uh-oh. Nope, keep going.
So he's like, all right, just make yourself at home, do whatever you want, have some food, whatever. So,
Okay, there's a wall between the two of you. You need to just keep telling this story. This is a disaster.
I'm sorry.
Okay. So, so he takes off. She's just hanging around, has her coffee, does whatever. She has to go to the bathroom at a certain point. So she goes to the toilet, has to take a number 2. It's considerable to the point that she actually clogs the toilet. She's like, oh, of all the fucking things to happen, she's looking around. There's no plunger. There's nothing. She does not know what to do. She's panicking. She's she doesn't know this guy's number. So she goes into the kitchen. She finds a Ziploc bag.
What?
Yeah. She unclogs the toilet manually. And I realize I'm using the word manually in the most literal sense possible.
Yeah.
Digs that out there. She fills up the Ziploc bag. This is just a disaster. She's like, this is like the worst possible situation.
God, I hope there's a reason for you telling the story.
There's not. So this is like she's making the best she can of the situation. Oh my God, I just got to get out of here. This is a nightmare. So she cleans off. She writes a note. She's like, "Oh, it was so great to meet you. This was really great. I hope we can see each other again sometime. Like, really, just had a wonderful time. Hope you have a good day at work. Goodbye. Thank you."
I think I have an idea where this goes.
Yeah. So anyway, Christ. All right, get out of here. She leaves. Door closes behind her. Automatically locks. Yes. And then as soon as the door closes, she realizes the bag of crap was left directly next to the note.
Yes, I knew it. Oh, so good.
On the kitchen counter. That's it. That everything has collapsed. It's a nightmare. It's a disaster. Oh no. Yeah. She doesn't have this guy's number. She has no way to contact him. Months later, she's in a bar and she sees this guy and she's like, "Oh my God." She starts to go over to him to be like, "Look, I can explain what happened here." And he sees her from across the room and just puts up his hand, and it is just no. Absolutely not. No. Goodbye.
Oh no.
Yeah. And that's that. And Nick, I want to know what you're capering like.
This is amazing.
Yeah.
So, that's a story that I told our hairdresser.
No.
What?
Yeah. That's a story that my coworker told me about their wife's office mate. And that happened. The chain is correct. What she described is correct. But I'm the one that told her that story. This is amazing. People listening, this was not, you can tell by their reactions, this was not planned.
Okay, were the mics running earlier when we were talking about, like, hopefully the person who's involved in the story doesn't listen to the podcast?
This is unbelievable. I'm completely gobsmacked.
Landis, I need to. Landis knows very well that Nick and I are friends. Nick
you were played?
I talk to Landis about Nick all the time. I assume that I come up in your conversation.
Can I just say something, Chris?
Yeah.
Hoisted.
She must have utterly forgotten that you were the origin of that story.
Yes.
You know why she told me that story?
Why?
It's because she said, "Oh, how's your new podcast going?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's going well. Nick has told some really great stories recently." And she was like, "Oh, really? Man, one of my clients told me the best story."
Oh my God!
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Did I tell the story well? Did I?
You did. No, that's the story to a T. That's
incredible because
it's an amazing story. I'll never forget it.
I'm glad you kept that bottled up successfully through the rest of the story. That was crucial.
It was hard. It was very hard, but I'm glad that I did. Yeah. Wow. You know, the funny thing is the chances of that now getting back are much higher.
Yeah. Right.
But it's fine though. I completely own that. Also, I know the people involved.
Landis consistently, when she referred to her client who told her this story, consistently referred to her as a she.
Oh man.
Yeah, it was like, oh, and then she's so good at telling stories. Like, I don't know if I'll be able to do it. So
okay, well then that raises two possibilities. One, that she forgot that it was me. Two, that she was intentionally masking that it was
incredible.
Right. That was the question that I asked way back when I said, "You guys know each other. She knows that you know each other. Yeah. She knows that you do a podcast. Right. Were you being played by your hairdresser?"
I mean, it could be a combination of both, in the sense that maybe she forgot who told it to her, but knew that it was a man and was masking it by saying
just
she.
That's
probably giving her a little too much credit.
Just to anonymize it slightly.
Yeah. She probably just forgot. She didn't say anything else about this woman. She didn't say like, "Oh, she's so annoying whenever she comes in for a haircut." No, she just said
like she's just really.
I just want to know who I am.
Yeah, she just made a point that she like told this story really well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was the one detail about this woman, was that
nice.
she was
That's
good at
nice
telling
to
it.
hear.
So I'm like, I better do a decent job of telling it so I can live
Right.
up to this woman's sterling storytelling reputation.
You have, Chris.
Well, thank you, Nick. So, I mean, I think we can pretty much tie a bow on that and move on.
Yeah, let's move on.
Nick, I know that you read a story that I have not yet
A reader
read.
sent in to us, Jay, and it's an article on Vox called "The Case for Raising Chickens in Virtual Reality."
Twist, I'm the scientist who did this research.
This is an article on Vox called "The Case for Raising Chickens in Virtual Reality," which comes with a photo, an illustration of what this is supposed to look like. Which, I mean, just...
Can I see it?
Yeah, I have seen
this photo is incredible. I mean, it's just a chicken...
It looks like a chicken wearing, like, a even stupider, like, Oculus Rift.
Well, because the chicken's
VR
eyes are on the
helmet.
side of its head.
It's like a foghorn attached to a chicken's head.
So it's a conical...
It looks it looks like it has two big, like, old-timey megaphones sticking out of each of its eyes pointing sideways.
Right. So the idea is called Second Livestock.
Oh no!
Which is a play on Second Life.
Oh my God! The virtual reality game or whatever it is.
And
it's just like a cyber realm.
game?
Second Life is just like a social 3D space with an economy.
Right.
So Second Livestock.
This is being developed by an assistant professor of design at Iowa State University
named Chris Remo.
Key to the vision of Second Livestock is that it would enable what Stewart calls virtual free-range living. In theory, you could run a farm of second livestock playing chickens who in fact live cheek by jowl with each other, but who perceive themselves as living together on an open field. He has a quote here. Maybe the farmer could disguise himself as a chicken to check in on his flock, but there would be no non-player characters. They'd be real chickens because the facilities are all networked together, and they'd be in the same virtual world, and they'd have microphones. So they're going to mic up the chickens.
Wait, what? So they're actually living...
What was that?
They're actually living cheek to cheek.
Yes, in
but they're
cages.
all in the game together at the same time. So the game is like positioning them farther apart than they actually are in the virtual space. What if they bump into each other physically
won't know they're
in the
a chicken.
real world? Do they think they're hitting an invisible wall?
The assumption has to just be these chickens won't know because they're chickens.
Such idiots.
Yeah.
But so these chickens are just going to develop an insane way of perceiving the world where they can walk forward.
These chickens are being born into the Matrix is what this is actually proposing. 100%.
That's exactly what
They've never actually moved in their life, but they've imagined through whatever sensory input causes the walking sensation inside of the VR to happen to make them think that that's how you walk. That's got to be how this works. Also, though, if the reality of locomotion in VR, like in big companies that try to make VR games, everyone always imagines it's like the holodeck from Star Trek.
Yeah.
God, I almost said Star Wars. What's wrong with me? Fired, hoisted, murdered. But the thing that always happens in VR when you let someone walk without them moving their actual body is they get motion sick and often throw up. So this could just be like day one of Second Livestock. They're like, okay, the system's on. And then just like 4 million chickens barf. Just uncontrollably barf. Like you just hear, and then just...
I mean, if they're born into it, presumably they would just... I assume the human barfing in this situation is a result of the gulf between expectation and like current sensory input.
So if a chicken's wearing horns on, like foghorn oculuses...
Yeah, oculi.
Oculi.
Yeah, from birth, right?
Maybe it's fine.
The thing that is more distressing to me about this article is how easily you could reframe it as the case for raising humans in virtual reality.
The second quote here is particularly good.
It enables humans to live a free-range life.
He says, there's research suggesting that free-range humans show all the signs of having a stressful life. They have more broken bones, they get broken legs, etc., whereas humans raised in little boxes don't have those indicators of stress. And who's to say which is better?
Who's to say?
You don't have the loss you do when you farm free-range humans.
When I first saw this article, I thought, like, this is a fun, wacky thing. Maybe, I don't know what I thought.
I mean, part of this literally just sounds like our actual lives now. They'd be real humans because the facilities are all networked together, and they'd be in the same virtual world, and they'd have microphones. I mean, that's...
Yeah, no, it's true. Get these chickens some apps.
Yeah.
Get them a voice assistant.
What if they could play Angry Birds? Why are they even? What's even are they missing?
As angry birds.
Yeah. What if these angry birds?
Well, they're not going to be angry birds. They're going to be happy and
that's right.
docile.
They're
That's
gonna be
true.
really
What if
happy
these
birds.
content birds?
Yeah.
We've created a new chicken VR platform called Content Birds.
Angry Birds is actually incredible chicken propaganda because it's like, look how angry these birds are. Look how happy you are. You could be
Imagine
like
if
these
you would
birds,
move around,
so
but no,
angry.
because the chicken would be like, I move around just fine. I have this huge infinite farm. I can go wherever I want.
That's true.
With millions of chickens.
Yeah, that's actually true. I mean, the angry birds are actually fictionally more like in bondage than the virtual birds
Yeah, the
perceive
angry birds
themselves
are the
to be.
propaganda. Like, that's
so
what you don't want.
Yeah, the propaganda is actually still the same. It's still like, oh, it's better to be free and it's bad to be like confined. It's just that they're doing that while in like a virtual reality freedom in which their bodies are actually physically confined.
I hope that the like in world sort of like first person body representation of these chickens is like really muscular. Like they're all they're all Brahma chickens
Brahma
in
chickens.
VR. They're like, I'm a
Oh my
huge
God.
rooster with like giant like
That's how
Clydesdale
they-
horse legs.
That's how they.
and they're actually just these like
They can all fly.
yeah, they can all fly, but in real life they're all just like Wally, like fat huge factory farm chickens, just sort
Oh
of.
God, that's so
Oh,
sad.
that's really. Oh.
God. Oh.
That's how they solve the gap between how much space is in between the chickens. In the thing, it's like they're all next to each other. They're actually quite far apart in virtual reality, but they're also huge that they're still all bumping into each other all the time
Right.
because they're these big
They're
badass
these huge Brahma
chickens. Yeah. I mean, I guess to get to the point where that would be valuable to the chickens, they would also have to create an entire chicken sort of industrial beauty complex where there's also like chicken magazines showing buff other chickens, and then the chickens have a reason to care about this, and they're like distracted from this this like shitty reality that they're secretly living in.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can look nice. They can accessorize their existence. They can fight. They can also have little virtual like miniature digital chickens that they get in fights for them, which look like traditional chickens and roosters, like regular like modern farm size ones that they look down on. But those
Right.
are just like they're Pokemon,
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
or those are maybe they have humans.
When describing the actual map of Second Livestock, Stewart gets fairly utopian. There's water sources and little bugs that crawl around that are mapped to the food and water trays so they can bend and drink water and eat food. These things are the ideal of chicken life, and there are no predators, so they're free to just worry about chicken business.
Chicken business is a great phrase.
Yeah.
He's of course referring to the in-game economy.
Right. Yeah.
He's of course referring
my
the
God.
virtual Second Life who buy and
No.
spend their clucks.
No, well, we saw this other thing this week, which was this. There's a Chinese farm of iPhones, thousands of iPhones that are rigged up to just
that's true,
constantly
yeah.
give ratings to things. If you could somehow put an iPhone in front of these chickens,
Wait, so
and they think
oh my
they're
God.
they think they're pecking away
The rating
to
farm.
Yeah, but they're
it's
just
the farm.
It's the rating
oh my
farm.
It's the
God.
rating farm. So just to like clarify what Nick is talking about,
I just saw it as a tweet.
like iPhone farm with some 10,000 iPhones just all hooked
It was
up
like
in
racks and racks. It looked like a video store or something, or like a bookstore.
Yeah, just
but
racks and
just
racks of
phones,
iPhones
as
all
far as you
plugged
can
in.
see.
And the purpose of it is presumably to sell mass ratings and reviews to like app developers or whoever who pay this farm to go through and just assign tens of thousands or however many, whatever bulk reviews are bought. And there's, I guess, people in there who just go like screen to screen to screen, tapping all the things, or maybe they have software that does that. But yeah, the ultimate vertical integration here is you have your chickens tapping away. You like have a robot that dispenses feed onto the screen.
Onto the 5-star spot.
5-star spot. And then the chickens go through. I mean, I guess that robot could also just press the button.
Sure, but
But why do that when you can have the organic touch of a chicken?
Well, the chickens are also on treadmills that power those robots. So it really goes, the whole thing.
gross.
Yeah.
The chickens are on treadmills which power the human matrix next door that's harvesting
gross.
human
Oh,
energy
no.
for batteries. Just the robots that keep the humans powered.
Oof.
You got that chicken farm.
Yeah.
The chickens are, of course, fed by corn, which is harvested just by however they harvest corn. They're already really efficient and depressing at harvesting corn.
Growing corn.
I mean, The entire middle 95% of America is a corn farm to power the East Coast chicken farm that powers the West Coast human farm.
No.
This whole enterprise has been rated 5 stars by a Chinese click rating farm. That's the world we're going to live in. Now that England has separated from the EU, they're going to finally get their empire back, but it's going to be different this time.
Yeah?
Yeah. England is strong. America is a chicken/human/corn farm.
Is a chicken farm. I guess.
I'm sure we've been sort of derisively referred to as that by some some upstanding Englishmen sometime in the last
the chicken
200
farm
years.
across the pond.
Just a fucking farm. Anyway, what am I talking about? What are we talking about? What is this podcast?
Unclear.
Chicken news.
Yeah. Shall we take a break?
Yes.
Yes.
This episode of Important If True is brought to you by Warby Parker. Really affordable, stylish sunglasses and prescription eyeglasses. With very nice frames, you can get them sent directly to your home, try them out, figure the one you want, and then get it sent to you with your prescription. If you go to warbyparkertrial.com/thumbs, figure out the one that will make you look the most stylish and the most erudite.
Or like the least stylish, if that's what you desire.
I mean, if you
really
want
like to contrast badly with your face, you could try real hard and do that.
If you have the refined taste to be able to tell which frames are sort of subtly less flattering to you, and also somehow simultaneously have a sense like that's what you enjoy, then you could maybe pull that off. I would be really impressed if both you and any other human were able to pick up on that.
If someone else looked at you and went,
nice.
That's a pair that almost goes with your face but doesn't, but I can tell that you deliberately picked that pair instead of a pair that looks really good.
Yeah, Warby Parker is probably the brand for that level of unnecessary irony.
And eyewear aficionados who
Yeah, but you could also just get a nice pair of glasses that is good. And you can get your 5 frames sent to your home for free to try out by going to warbyparkertrial.com/thumbs. And we have a shout out this week. This is from Gavin Valentine. He says, "Hey guys, I've been a huge fan of the show for a few years now, and I would love to have a shout out for my card game that is on Kickstarter right now. It's called Bullets and Teeth, and it is a casual zombie game based on your favorite toxoplasmosis." Toxoplasmosis, the weird virus or parasite that infects lives in cat guts and makes rats love cat urine.
Yeah.
It's the weirdest thing.
Makes rats want to hang out near where cats are.
Yep. So this, again, the Kickstarter is called Bullets and Teeth. It's a casual zombie card game for 3 to 5 players. There are only 2 reward tiers. It is a very nice, clean, elegant Kickstarter campaign. Yeah, there's just the standard edition of the game and the special edition of the game. That's it.
Yeah, it's really nice. The art on all the cards and the design of the game looks really, really professional, too. It's really good stuff.
Mm-hmm. So if you search for Bullets and Teeth Kickstarter, you will find this. It's by Last Ditch Games.
Oh, also, they've already hit their goal, so this is definitely happening. So if this is just a game you're interested in, just get on the tail end of this Kickstarter.
Get on it. You know that you're going to get your thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Bullets and Teeth Kickstarter. Search for it. You'll find it. It'll be right on the first page of Google. And if you would like a shout out on this show, either personal or commercial, you can find all of the details about that at store.idlethumbs.net. We have an email here from Andreas, who says, "Hello, Thumbs. I'm writing in the hope you can help me answer a question you have inadvertently caused me to ask. At some point during a recent podcast, one of you described something as being, quote, the most 90s thing ever. That made me think I'm not sure what that means. I'm hurtling towards 40, so I'm becoming painfully aware of just how out of touch I am with increasingly large parts of the world and culture. But while I have a grip of what I think being the 60s, 70s, and 80s means, I've realized my decade-based cultural catch-alls end there. I'm wondering if it's because I entered the 90s as a 12-year-old kid and left it a 21-year-old kid. A decade is a long time, and 1991 was very different to 1999. So these descriptions can always be picked apart, but I asked a few people, mostly older than me, and they've been equally vague, so I'd be interested to hear what you think of when you describe something as 90s. Thanks for your help, Andreas Hunter, St. Albans, England."
I'm trying to remember what we even described as being so 90s.
I think, just based on having, Jake, known you for like 15 years, when I feel that, at least in the context of us talking about stuff, when something is described as the most 90s, I think the thing we're thinking of is like zigzag magenta
jazz cups and
jazz cups and
Nickelodeon
like, or
and
grunge,
like weird,
or the confluence of those things, which are very different styles, but both
they've all kind of mishmashed together though into like
and
That's
then
true.
also this sort of like smirking postmodern like sense of irony.
Yeah.
I feel like the sort of DreamWorks animated animal character with a sort of shit-eating smirk and like one arched eyebrow. Obviously, numerically, there's a lot more of that in the 2000s, but I feel like that was born out of a very 90s like
as if
batitude.
Yeah, when I think of
kid marketed like aggressive, ironic like bad.
The 90s, yeah, it feels
stuff.
like, I mean, a lot of my perception of stuff that I think of when I think of That's So 90s is sort of spinning off of the 80s in different directions. Like the sort of the 90s, in hindsight at least, feel like a time where culture either sort of thought, we've reached the end of it. We've achieved some level of stationary prosperity and niceness. And then the other side of it was people basically screaming out of control, like realizing that was not the case and that everyone else was deceived. And either the two counterculture directions then were either I'm going to be angry and freaking out, or I'm going to be a smug idiot about how you all have the wool pulled over your eyes. And both of those people are going to do that by cutting things up and making a zine, or like mixing some stock footage together with footage of them playing guitar in a basement in like a black and white movie.
Right.
I feel like,
well,
but then the top side of that though is like First Kid starring Sinbad.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, the wool over your eyes thing, though, I think did manifest itself at like the end of the decade with like Fight Club and like even just
Matrix.
like the Matrix and
right.
like there were so many movies about that. Like you're living in a world that you think is safe, but you're really actually a piece of shit, and here's why. And, it's just
but that feels like that started with a sort of with snarkier counterculture
right.
comedy in the early 90s, and then that
before it
that sort of
gradually
boiled over to
David
like everything's
Fincher
actually
version.
bad. But like it's a high concept pitch, like super elaborate sci-fi version of everything is bad, and then that finally just boiled over into it is bad, which is the time in which we now live.
The aughts,
But it feels like people being really content or angry or snarky about that contentment is what sort of defines the 90s to me at this point when looking back. But then, also, squiggly Fresh Prince of Bel-Air opening credits, and like, lots of weird paint splatter art as represented by the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and Toe Jam and Earl and Nickelodeon and everyone's pants.
Yeah.
Just the pants people wore.
Yes.
Yeah.
Computers had gotten good enough to render crisp enough art that the fascination right then was very much about
Look what we can do.
remixing and repurposing other stuff, like combining video and digital work and practical photography and like shitty fonts just on top of something because you can do it. And it feels like it took a decade for that stuff to sort of properly get synthesized into anything aesthetically long lasting. Like, I don't say that to just dump on that stuff, because that's like
you love that stuff.
A lot of like 90s people sort of
pastiche.
Weird. How do we mix all these medias together now that we can? Like, some of the aesthetic of that stuff is like my favorite stuff of like my life time.
Well, so like an example.
But you're right that it's
recently,
not long lasting.
Yeah, an example that came up recently because of the new series
now.
of Mystery Science Theater 3000 is like the sort of production style of the original Mystery Science Theater 3000 show, which involved a lot of compositing and like full scale practical sets, but also like
you just blue screen a model
paper,
into them.
Sort of.
Which is interesting because Mystery Science Theater itself is that sort of 90s hodgepodge pastiche thing, because like it is
very
a big,
self-aware, ironic.
It's like a practical set they built themselves that has a blue screen into a model that is then them blue screening a silhouette of themselves on top of old movie footage that they found, all of which is kind of a callback to like the aesthetic of 1960s marionette stuff like Thunderbirds. Like, the farther away I've gotten from that element of 90s culture, the more I'm kind of annoyed at how a lot of it was received at the time, because I feel like something like Mystery Science Theater actually came from a place of like love and curiosity and a desire to make things and sort of live in your own version of that. But I feel like because everyone was so obsessed with sort of like the burgeoning explosion of postmodernism in pop culture and like irony, irony and stuff, that everyone, anytime anyone did one of those things, it felt like someone would always go, aha, I see what you're doing is a very pointed and brilliant takedown of these bad movies, or of like, you know, like when we talked on Twin Peaks Rewatch about that a lot, about people misinterpreting Twin Peaks like love and meticulous detail for snark, and how like that show, which is a pretty emblematic 90s thing in our pop culture at this point, even as Twin Peaks went on and started eating itself, it became snarky instead of just sort of emotionally or aesthetically interested in those things.
Instead of emotionally true.
Here on
the podcast where we discuss the emotionally true.
Yeah.
Sorry, this is a good conversation, so I don't mean to interrupt it.
That's fine. We're going way too long.
But did you guys see the, and this is a visual thing, so it's not great for a podcast, but did you guys see the Batman Forever clip that's been going around that somehow is a 60 frame per second clip of Batman Forever, which was it was filmed for just a standard film, 24 frames.
Well, I don't understand what.
I don't know how it exists, but it does.
Was it a slow-mo shot that they sped back up? Because then it would have been captured at a higher frame rate than displayed.
No, it's 3 minutes long. And
weird. Okay.
It's extremely strange that it exists, and I don't think people know why it exists, but it's just on YouTube. It's incredible because it's Jim Carrey in the stupid suit and like just cheesing it up, and like it's just awful. But then in 60 frames per second, it just feels like a Doctor Who episode or something. On top of that,
once things go to 60
awful.
frames a second and you lose the sort of abstraction that you get from 24 frames a second, you're like, oh, that's just a guy being an idiot.
You just see Jim Carrey on the set that looks very clearly like a set just being like a goofball, and it's just awful. Like it doesn't have the sensibility of the 60s Batman or like the awareness of it, so it's just terrible. It's just straight trash. It's very good. It's hilarious.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry. There's no way to actually describe it on the podcast. Anyway.
Weird.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Well, that was. I don't know if we came to any conclusions there at all.
No, I think Jake nailed it in one. I think he's correct.
That's probably true. Yeah.
I think about that aspect of like things are kind of bad, but you have to instead of being aggressively angry or issuing some sort of skewering takedown that will wake up the sheeple, to just try to make lemonade out of the lemons of the world that you find yourself in. And I think about that a lot when we do this podcast, to be honest. So like I think a lot about my favorite sort of like weird 90s stuff when I think about this, and not just because I want this to be a weird 90s podcast.
With Jake, everything is a little bit of a weird 90s something.
Yeah.
Jake is our resident pseudo Gen Xer on this podcast. You're kind of one.
I don't know where I land.
You're on the borderline. You were born in the year that could be considered either.
I was born on contested ground.
Yeah. Nick and I are millennials.
Oh yeah,
Jake is half millennial.
There's like a Gen X millennial no-fly zone in which I exist, and it's really just exhausting.
That's your X-Men power. I'm a photic sneezer. Nick has whatever stupid shit we determined last week, and Jake is half millennial, half Gen X.
So I'm just the worst.
Yeah, Jake has the habits of a millennial, but the sensibility of a Gen Xer.
So I'm financially irresponsible, but like weird video effects.
That's basically.
Also, I'm eminently unemployable, apparently, and hate work. No matter what, I fucking hate jobs. Ask any baby boomer at any era in my life.
Sam writes, Jordan's NyQuil terrors, and this is in reference to the sort of crazy Tetris dreams from last week's episode. Mm-hmm. Jordan's NyQuil terrors brought something up for me which I haven't thought about in a few years. I've had full-on waking night terrors exactly twice in my life, both around the age of 10 or 11. While not as violent as what Jordan described, they did involve me staggering around the house late at night, wide-eyed, shaking, and pale, spooking the dickens out of my parents. One episode was likely triggered by jet lag, but the other had no clear provenance. Both terrors were comprised of 3 same-cycling sensory images. 1. Tumbling through a rainbow-colored synaptic landscape. Imagine a more colorful version of the opening credits of Fight Club, which was at the time years away from release. 2.
A seminal 90s...
90s, I know.
Seminal 90s imagery.
Ironic postmodern dump on society. 2. the sound of a zipper being zipped up.
I don't like that.
I don't like that either. 3, Luigi, in the style of the Super Mario Brothers Super Show cartoon segments, walking jauntily up to a door and ringing the doorbell. What?
God, the idea of that just pulsing, cycling of just zip, ding dong, zip, ding dong. That is also the most.
That also would be a 90s.
Yeah.
Do you guys remember that from Requiem for a Dream?
That's basically what that is. Except that, it's like a Requiem for a Dream drug, cycle before a mom aggressively cleans a house.
Yeah.
Except that there's like blurry, contorted footage of Luigi ringing a doorbell.
Walking. I like that it involves him walking jauntily up to the doorbell. Ding dong, cut. He says, if I had to label my mental and emotional state as it tried to process these 3 images, it would be cosmic horror. It seemed desperately, desperately important that I either make sense of these images or on no uncertain terms not make sense of them. Best, Sam.
When I heard this email, I kept trying to pull a specific example and I couldn't, but I remember having experiences like this when I was younger, like when I was sort of tween to teen age, I feel like, where I would be like sitting at my desk in my room doing homework or like trying to fall asleep, and just something would sort of start looping in my brain, but then it would just fill me to my core with a crazy intense dread that I've only ever felt as an adult when I've like seriously fucked something up at work and I know I'm going to get totally chewed out, but like something, I did just something real bad, and like that just deep dread. But I would get that when I was younger from just like a strange like looping sound in my house, or like just a thought that I would then like somehow focus deep on. But this version of it, where this person keeps repeatedly having like weird rainbow like imagery plus zoop, plus Luigi ringing a doorbell, I can the underlying rhythmic nature of just picturing that feels like the exact sort of thing that, had I somehow accidentally fixated on it when I was younger, would have just completely triggered that dread state. But also, what good. I'm so glad that Luigi is in there.
For the 90s, it could also be a super highly saturated, kind of blown out version of the video, right? Where the colors are like the colors are sort of sickly to the point that they almost have a green tint, like they're in a Smash Mouth video or something.
Yeah,
and then
everything's just bleeding through.
Bing bong.
Yeah, this feels like this could also then be mixed into a really intense, like, slow jam in the style of like the cash register sounds in Money by Pink Floyd.
Right. Yeah.
Except that this person is just screaming as they're like, why did I go to this show and this band is playing literally the sound effects and imagery from my dream, and then like a sick bass riff gets put on top of it. And then he wondered, how did they get these images? And then he is linked to an article about scientists able to extract images from dreams. Which I think Nick knows about and I don't.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What was the deal with that? I didn't read this either.
Apparently, scientists have now, like, they're developing a couple of methods using, like, MRI scanners, like MRI machines, to scan brainwave activity while people are sleeping. And what they did is they took all of these test subjects and recorded their sort of brain images while they were sleeping, woke up, asked them what they were dreaming about, took that and mapped that image, and then associated it with those images. And then
so like compiling a database.
When they were basically compiling a database of what the
it's
brain
like a
looks
lookup
like.
reference.
You were dreaming about a building. Okay, this is what your brain looks like when you're dreaming about a building.
Up in your brain.
Right, and they built an algorithm around that. Oof. And then had them go back to sleep after building up this database. And then when they woke up, the algorithm said, oh, you were dreaming about a tree. And over 60% of the time, it was correct.
Wow.
And so apparently now they can just figure out what you were dreaming about based on what your brain looks like.
I hope that that's been increasingly refined. I also wonder how much it connects. I imagine that doesn't work from person to person. Like, the things that fire in my brain when I'm dreaming about Luigi probably don't match to that guy's.
If you've never seen the Super Mario Brothers Super Show, maybe that's not, I mean, I was going to say then you probably don't have this dream, but I don't know.
Right, like
what if that just pops into your brain
right,
one
what
night?
if they're like, yeah, just for some reason, the Google image search images we've compiled that match up with these people's dreams, like, yeah, America just starts dreaming about Luigi for a reason that they don't understand.
Yeah, this rainbow-colored synaptic landscape, sound of a zipper being zipped.
I meant more like if they had built a database of like 300 people who had slept and recorded their like image results. If I could then sleep in that bed and it would accurately somehow know any of the images that I had, I can only hope that it does. I'm sure it doesn't, but I hope that it does.
Yeah.
I would probably throw off their results by telling them every time that I slept that I dreamt of Luigi and a zipper.
Our
only test subject
is pretty high.
Yeah, you always dreamt about Luigi.
Pretty much Luigi and that zipper, generally. So I think we're gonna put money on that one tonight.
Yeah, it's such a cool and smart way to get a start into this. I mean, like the thing that you want. Not that you want, I don't know if you want it. The thing that I always thought would be really cool when I was younger was the ability to basically plug a camera into my brain and just get like some sort of visual output representation of the images that I was seeing when I was dreaming. Mm-hmm. But being able to basically have a visual dream diary like this is really good. And it makes you like, that study I think was done the article was in 2013. Mm-hmm. So I hope that 4 or 5 years later that's gotten more refined or that they've collected more and more data. Mm-hmm. The ability to plug yourself in to that and feed the data into it for long enough time that you could then have like months of output without needing any new input and see what the hell 90s multimedia collage that machine barfs out of your brain would be so interesting.
Yeah. Well, the way this is actually being done is they're creating like collages of images and then playing that back for people. So it's not just one image.
Right.
So they're already kind of like in that mode of like, oh, here you were dreaming about a door, and now here you were dreaming about Luigi. And but the other thing I saw, there was a study.
One thing real quick about that. The thing that would be terrifying if you're the guy who wrote us about the Luigi zipper weird brain flow dream is if he then spent the next like 2 months plugged into that machine and then someone gave him back like the tome that was like the image script of his sleep, and just like every 2 or 3 nights that cycle just showed up and he had no memory of it happening. If you're just like da-da-da-da-da, then you just see like a still from Fight Club, a stock image of a zipper and Luigi's face just like 16 times, and then it just goes back to like dogs and trees and stuff, but you just until the back like 3 pages of the book is just Luigi.
Well, that actually relates to another study that was published in Nature Neuroscience last month.
You've become the dream master.
Yeah. Which, using similar methods and studying like EEG patterns, scientists have now figured out basically like they can tell for sure that you're dreaming and not dreaming, right?
Right. It used to be like you're just REM sleep was dreams.
Right. Yeah, and that was it. But now they've determined that basically your brain is essentially always fully awake, even if you're not.
Wow.
Which they're saying like has huge implications in terms of just consciousness, and like the thing they were saying that's really interesting is
what if we could use more than 10% of our brains?
But what was really interesting is they're saying like it's going to allow them to basically weed out
impure thoughts.
Well, yeah, like
what?
I just at this point I can only think of Luigi as some kind of like weird,
he's like a cavorting dream demon.
Entity. Yeah, fucking Freddy Krueger or like that one of those weird thing from that Legion show. You know, like the weird guy with
the weird monster
no neck.
Yeah.
Like that's
Luigi's one of those.
Well, that relates to a third. No. Also, they've found that basically, when people woke up and said I was having a dream about like talking to somebody, the speech center of their brain was active, and they've actually like mapped all these things. So your brain is essentially doing the same thing it's doing while you're dreaming as it is when you're doing things.
That makes the concept of sleep even weirder.
It just means your brain's inventing consciousness. It's just inventing.
Your brain doesn't need sleep. It's just like all your shitty other body parts connected to it.
Yeah, basically.
So that means when we're all living in the fucking chicken virtual reality with foghorns coming out of our ears.
Yeah.
Like we're going 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
Because our bodies are just being constantly like supplemented.
I remember reading
a
thing that said that sleep's purpose was actually some sort of chemical cleaning process on your brain, but I do not remember the article that I read about that.
Yeah, because if the brain can be active all the time, but at a certain point, it starts filling you up with images of a fucked up Luigi and stuff. So it's like, okay, we got to chemically clean this away
nightmares are the
every
brain's
night.
way of saying, I'm rested now, wake up. Wake up! Wake up!
I'm good.
Wake up!
I'm good. Get me out of here.
It just sounds to me like
I'm just by myself right now. I need other shit to happen.
it seems like sleep at one point people thought of it as like a total refresh, but it might be closer to like a midair refueling.
Yeah.
If you're psychologically stressed, at a certain point, Luigi, the Dream Master, will saunter up to your door here and ring the doorbell.
The way that it works is
consciousness.
If you see Luigi sort of just gently pressing a doorbell and like giving you some sounds on loop, it's like time for sleep, time for rest. And then if you see Waluigi like puppeting, cavorting around, going, then it's time to wake the fuck up. Yep. Anyway, you guys want to call this podcast a podcast?
Let's quickly do a correction from last week because we shared some
a clarification. You mean
untrue information on Important If True. We shared something that seemed emotionally true but was factually false. So a couple people wrote into us about this. This is from Michelle McBride, who tweets an article to us from Marginal Revolution. Dennis is not more likely to be a dentist.
Yeah.
So
we couched it like 1% that study was likely trash, but it was too good to not mention.
Yeah. Here are the details. So Jerry, Dennis, and Walter were the 39th, 40th, and 41st most frequent male names in the 1990 census. But in a nationwide search, they found 482 dentists named Dennis, but just 257 named Walter and 270 named Jerry, a highly statistically significant difference, hence the meme, Dennis is more likely to be a dentist, right? So if all these names are about equally common, but one of them is way more represented around dentists, okay, that makes sense. Here's the problem. If, for example, in theory, no one was ever named Jerry prior to 1989, but in 1990, the name skyrocketed to prominence following the appearance of Seinfeld, there would be still no dentists named Jerry yet, despite Jerry being a very popular name in the 1990 census. So that's an extreme...
Oh, they didn't wait for those people to grow up?
I guess not, but there's all kinds of ways that data could be wrong. Continuing, following this logic, instead of comparing the number of dentists named Dennis to those named Jerry or Walter, we should compare the number of dentists named Dennis to the number of lawyers named Dennis, another professional field. Yeah. Actually, Dennises are just as overrepresented among lawyers as among dentists.
So Dennis is just a powerful name.
I think Dennis is just a fucking nerd name. Like you're just like, if you've got your parents named you Dennis, probably you're a fucking nerd.
Wow, everyone. Let's see the study on this.
I want to apologize to any dentists listening to this podcast right now.
I'm just saying.
I think you're cool.
And Chris is a name for a classic bully shithead who hates nerds.
We have some more clarification, but I guess we can put that off till next week because it's less of a sort of factual issue. Shall we do some endorsements?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Nick, what do you have?
I have kind of a weird one, which is that a couple weeks ago I had a night where I think I was sick at the time, and
you had this dream about Luigi,
the
doorbell,
zippers, and I don't really remember how I got into this, but I fell down an internet hole, and basically just on the topic of professional poker, which is I don't play poker. Yeah. I'm aware of it insofar as it was a thing in the early aughts that just sort of exploded and it was just on TV all the time.
Yeah.
And I've watched like Celebrity Poker once probably or something stupid like that. But like I don't really know anything about poker.
Yeah.
And I just started learning about it and watching like coolest poker moments on YouTube and just like stuff that like people were obsessed with. And then I fell into this old Grantland article called When We Held Kings, which is about, and if you don't know anything about poker,
when we held kings,
if you don't know anything about poker, it's about this might be the most likely guy that you know about. It's about this guy Chris Moneymaker, who was the first guy.
I don't know who it is.
Anyway, he was huge. I remember hearing about him, but like. He was the first.
Is that his real name, or
it's his real name, and there's a whole section of this oral history that's about that.
I'm reintroducing the concept of names governing your life profession.
I know, right?
That was taken off the table by facts, but it was brought back by emotional truth.
Emotional truth.
Yeah. The history of his name is actually interesting. He goes into it. But anyway, he was the first guy who played internet poker to go to the World Series of Poker, which is usually filled with like poker pros with cowboy hats and, the smoke-filled halls and stuff. And just like came in as one of like 1,000 people and just won $1 million or something. And the oral history of this guy is fascinating.
Does it go all the way back to his ancestors in like medieval England who were rich?
I mean, it does briefly, but like it's the odds of this guy and just his story and like everything about it. As somebody who doesn't really care about poker, it was fascinating. It's a really, really good story, and it made me one appreciate poker more, but two, just like it made me go back and watch like the last hour of that tournament, and just everything about it was just like, it's just so riveting and interesting.
Nice.
And I recommend it.
So your endorsement is an article called "When We Held Kings" on the sadly departed website Grantland.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's cool.
All right.
I have another kind of esoteric endorsement. I am endorsing learning about the concept of the modern day urban eruv. Are you guys familiar with this? The Jewish religious concept?
No.
I find this really interesting.
Wait, say it again?
Eruv, E-R-U-V, if you want to search for it and read more about it. E-R-U-V. This is it's a symbolic wall of string, just like a line of string to symbolize a wall that is suspended above city streets, and it serves as a religious boundary of the communal Jewish home. So, like, traditionally in Judaism, in like Orthodox Judaism, you are prohibited from carrying during the Sabbath outside of the home. Like, you literally are not supposed to like carry things on the Sabbath, right? Like, that's like an exertion of effort that is prohibited. But within the bounds of the eruv, which defines this like symbolic collective home, this is like a weird theological sort of I don't want to say loophole, because that's sort of that seems like a pejorative like statement, but it's like a sort of theological construct that allows like observance of the Sabbath in this traditional manner in sort of like your just normal like area of operation. And this is something that over the last several decades has sort of just, as far as I can tell, basically completely silently just become a thing in a bunch of urban environments. So at this point, the New York eruv covers almost the entire borough of Manhattan. Not the entire thing, but you can like look at them. You can look at maps that show, and it's been growing over the decades. Like this like string boundary has like increased over time. And there's one in San Francisco. It's a lot smaller, but it covers most of the Richmond, including your neighborhood, Nick. You are within the eruv.
Nice.
Yeah, and there's like people like who have to on a weekly basis go around. I mean, who I assume they're volunteers, but they go around and they actually inspect this string boundary to make sure that it's still, there, and they repair it if need be, and so that it's intact during the Sabbath. I just find it like a really fascinating sort of extension of traditional religious life, completely seamlessly into a modern urban type of living that would have just not existed, millennia ago in this way, in this sort of dense form that it does now. So yeah, I endorse learning about the eruv, and look it up and see if your city has one of these. I just thought it was a really cool thing.
That's cool.
That's my endorsement. Jake, what do you have?
I am going to endorse watching 2 videos on the internet.
Nice.
This is in follow-up to the sort of aesthetic change over decades, and sort of from that reader mail and us talking about what is the 90s. There's 2 pieces of media from the last like 20 years. These are stupidly specific cuts, but that I love watching because I think that they're actually aesthetic inflection points when one style gives way to another. And one of them is the trailer to the 2000 Guy Ritchie movie Snatch.
I remember that trailer.
I strongly recommend watching Snatch, and think about like...
I mean, I've seen Snatch, but I don't remember this trailer.
The opening half of the Snatch trailer is like sort of electronic drum music, and the title cards are these like neon green and blue, like stretched ovals with weird stretched white typography that like jitters digitally across all different sizes, and it's like the ultimate heist, and it looks just like it's out of the like sort of Matrix and that era, like techno heist. Everything's like super slick, but it still sort of has that grungy 90s typography. And then halfway through it,
isn't it just Brad Pitt kind of speaking?
Brad Pitt speaks in a weird voice,
gibberish voice. Yeah.
But then
weird.
The
voice.
song Apache comes on, which is that like super 70s horn section blaring thing, and then all of a sudden, so it's like this like
they're like bum, bum, bum,
but this like really gritty organic sound, and then all of the cast is introduced by way of themselves. Freeze framing and turning into these sort of roughly hewn, screen printed like boxing fight posters that look like something from the like 1910s. But so it basically in the middle of this trailer, it goes from the super slick like web 1.0 / tech aesthetic to like hipster butcher shop from like the mid 2000s, like
so
that.
It's just this is actually the bridge.
It's finally going away again, but like I felt like we had a decade of like the Snatch title cards as everything's aesthetic forever. The other one is 5 years later, and it's the opening credits to the TV show House. I strongly recommend watching these.
I've never seen House.
I feel like House is the missing link show between old pre-golden age of television TV and golden age of like prestige television. Because like, you know, House, it's still a straight up medical procedural, except that like it's shot really well, and it's executive produced by Bryan Singer, the director of X-Men and Usual Suspects. And like, you know, it's got all these super aesthetic things where they don't just write on the chalkboard, they write on like the clear plastic thing that you can see through, that the cinematographer can blur the exterior out. But it's also still just a hospital drama. And the opening credits to House are an amazing missing link, because House, I think, is the TV intro that every TV intro has ripped off ever since. Like it's it's like a Massive Attack song, I think. So it's like the sort of like super chilled out, atmospheric, electronic, but kind of organic. Like it sounds like basically like it could be the Westworld theme, basically. And it's like these macro photography shots of sort of like gold tinged versions of microscopic organisms swimming around, or like a slow out of focus shot of a human brain and a medical chart. Like, you know, just it could be Game of Thrones, it could be Westworld, it could be
every credit sequence,
The Crown.
now.
But then you can tell that they're like, this is really bold. How do we tell people that it's a hospital drama? In the middle of this, it just cuts to a helicopter shot of a hospital from above with no crazy color correction or anything. Then it just cuts to a shot of the entire cast walking down a hallway.
Right.
Like it just cuts.
Don't forget, it's still television.
Right.
Yeah, this is fine still.
Like it's so good that it just has like, boop, just like it blinks into just like Law and Order or like a hospital soap opera for a second in the middle of all this other stuff. It's
so Jake is endorsing.
I endorse watching
the trailer to the 2000 Guy Ritchie film Snatch and the opening credits.
To House MD.
From House MD.
I think these are really fun to watch aesthetic inflection points where you can sort of see like the transition between between aesthetics that like the two aesthetics in the House intro and the two aesthetics in the Snatch intro are both
bookends,
shitty overused tropes of their era's aesthetics, like and styles.
But these two things
they have
paved
both.
the way.
They have it's like you can see the switch getting thrown in the middle of them.
I see. All right.
Yeah.
Weird.
Yep.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us on Important If True. We will be back next week. And if you would like to send us an email, if you have any questions, if you need our advice or consultation or, thoughts of any kind about whatever is on your mind, you can send that to questions@importantiftrue.com. We're also on Twitter @ImportantCast, on Facebook facebook.com/importantiftrue. And our website is importantiftrue.com, which has links to all this other stuff on it. If you would like ad-free versions of this podcast, you can get those by pledging to our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/idlethumbs. And there's other fun stuff on there, including a weird sort of branching continuity postcard sort of campaign that you can be part of.
And we do a monthly just Q&A episode where you can ask us any question or make us talk about anything, and we will.
That's right. All that is at patreon.com/idlethumbs. On that, thank you for listening. We'll be back next week from Idle Thumbs. I am Chris Remo.
I'm Nick Brecken.
I'm Jake Rodkin. Ah! Oh no! I just woke up from a nightmare where Chris kept saying "stay spicy." Luigi kept saying "stay spicy."
Stay spicy.
You gonna tell that barber story?
I don't know.
Oh, yeah,
I don't know. If I do, I don't want to open with it because just in case she ever listens to this podcast,
you want it to
I want
be
to
a
decrease
little bit?
the likelihood that she'll actually get far enough into the episode to hear it.
Why? Because you don't want to encourage her? Is that why?
No, I don't think she would mind because she sort of like indicates she's like, oh, you should use that on your podcast.
Yeah.
And I was like, haha, yeah. But maybe she was kidding.
She wasn't.
But I don't want to ask because then if she says no.
Then you can't.
I think it's pretty safe to use.
I do too, just knowing her.
Oh, she would be pleased as punch that you told that.
That's true. That's true. I mean, I have to assume. Never mind.
Without knowing the story, it's impossible for me to have an opinion about this.